Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines we're tracking for you this evening. The Sensex and the Nifty end with marginal gains after a range-bound session. Banks and mid-caps also gain in tandem with the blue chips. Biocon Biologics does a further deal with Serum Institute, restructuring the strategic partnership. Serum will invest a total of $300 million, valuing the Biocon subsidiary at $6 billion. Adar Poonawalla tells CNBC-TV18 he has no plans to increase his stake further for the moment. Nestle India beats estimates with profits rising nearly 25%, reports the highest growth rate in a decade, even as rising milk prices impact margins. The company says all product groups delivered double-digit growth. About 14 electric vehicle companies which are facing investigations for allegedly misappropriating FAME subsidies are considering stake sales. Companies say the suspension of subsidies have impacted their credit worthiness, add that banks are not keen to extend working capital loans to them. That's a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. Facing an uproar for employees, Air India defends the new contract. Sources say senior management has reached out to staff, saying flying allowance is amongst the highest in India. Pilot unions have pledged to fight if any employee is sacked for not signing the new contract. Day 4 of pleas seeking legal sanctity for same-sex marriage. Petitioners argue that marriage is an evolving concept and that the majority must not be allowed to determine the rights of minorities. Petitioners say the centre's submission seems to suggest that there were no LGBT relationships prior to the Britishers coming to India, which is not the case. After 10 days of street fighting, Sudan's warring factions agreed to a 3-day ceasefire. India starts Operation Kaveri to evacuate stranded citizens. The first batch of 278 Indians have left Port Sudan and are headed to Jeddah. US President Joe Biden formally launches his re-election campaign, releases a video asking Americans to give him another 4 years to finish what he started. Vice President Kamala Harris will be his running mate again. 3 high-profile exits in U.S. newsrooms in the last 24 hours. Fox News dismissed Tucker Carlson, its most popular primetime host, after Dominion defamation fallout. CNN says it's parted ways with longtime host Don Lemon, but offers no explanation. NBC Universal Chief Executive Jeff Schill leaves the organization after admitting to an inappropriate relationship. Well, let's start the day's market action. A range-bound session on Dalal Street, ending with marginal gains. So we saw the Sensex up 75, the Nifty gained about 25 points. The Nifty Bank Index also eked out marginal gains. But we are in the midst of earnings, so let's kick off earnings corner for today, starting with Nestle India, beating street estimates with profits rising nearly 25% year-on-year. This is the highest growth rate the company has reported in a decade, and that is despite the impact of rising milk prices on margins. Mangalam is standing by now to wrap up Nestle's numbers for us. A strong quarter, Mangalam.
Well, Nestle reported a bumper first quarter calendar 2023 numbers, and that's primarily led by the company's top line, which was above street expectations by a mile. We saw a revenue growth of 21.3% in the company's overall sales, and as a result of which it's the highest quarterly growth that the company's posted in their top line in over a decade. Also, at the same time, the EBITDA at an absolute level and the net profit at an absolute level were much above street expectations. EBITDA just shy of that 1100 crore mark, and the net profit a little over 700 crores as well. The reason why the stock did not react strongly on the upside are two. There are two reasons. The first one is that we had already seen a big move in the stock price before the numbers, and secondly, the margins were a tad below street expectations, about 30-40 basis points lower than expectations and 70 basis points below the same time last year as well. And that was on account of raw material inflation that we've seen, especially in the milk and milk products universe, where 30 to 40% jump has caused a bit of a dent in the company's gross margins as well. The management alluded to demand recovering going forward, a volume growth of close to around 5% and if you discount the low unit packs of Maggi, the volume growth this time around has been around 11 to 12%. So strong sales environment. The costs, they believe, that will remain firm, especially on the side of milk, over the next few quarters.
All right, Mangalam, many thanks for joining us. In big global earnings, Swiss bank UBS reporting its first quarterly earnings after the Credit Suisse acquisition. The bank saw a 52% annual drop in net profit at $1 billion in Q1. Revenues come in at $8.7 billion, operating expenses at $7 billion. The drop in net profit was due to increased provisions following a securities litigation matter.
If you look on an underlying basis, we had a very strong performance. Of course, when you compare it to the record quarter of first quarter of last year, they are not as good as that. At this stage, I'm pleased that we are closing a chapter, a 15 years old chapter of our own litigation. We have to be patient a little bit, but of course, we still believe we're going to close this transaction by the end of this quarter.
That is UBS. And back home, the big story from Deal Street: Biocon Biologics and Serum Institute have agreed to restructure their strategic partnership. According to the new terms, Serum will make an additional equity investment of $150 million in Biocon Biologics, taking its total investment to $300 million. Serum will pick up a 4.9% stake in the Biocon subsidiary. The deal values Biocon Biologics at $6 billion. As per the deal terms agreed in 2021, the company was valued at just under $5 billion, so there has been an upward movement. Biocon Biologics will have access to 100 million doses of vaccines annually. It will also get distribution rights to Serum's vaccine portfolio. Biocon's Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw and Serum's Adar Poonawalla spoke exclusively to CNBC-TV18 on the reasons for restructuring the deal and the impact it will have on both companies. Take a look.
There was an original deal that was struck in 2021 about offering a 15% stake in return for, certain financials linked to vaccines. Now that has been replaced by a straight equity, investment, whereas, Serum had already invested $150 million in Biocon Biologics. And there was a loan that is now being converted into equity, which will add another $150 million and make it an aggregate investment of $300 million at an approximate aggregate valuation of $6 billion. So I think that's the change in the restructured arrangement that we now have with Serum Institute.
This is a 10-15-year horizon and vision that we're looking at. It's a 15-year arrangement, so there's plenty of time, to generate some good sales, through our other vaccines. And it's not just limited to vaccines that we make. In the strategic partnership, if Biocon or Biologics have opportunities and other vaccines that they find through their network and partners that they would want us to manufacture, we can manufacture that as well. So the agreement that we have now with them covers, and is not limited to all of these sort of opportunities. We've got a profit-sharing arrangement in the agreement, which shares the profits, of the vaccines that will be made.
Well, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw and Adar Poonawalla. Now, India's fourth largest pharma company, Mankind Pharma's 4,300 crore rupee IPO has opened for subscription. The issue will be available for the public to bid till April 27th. At 4,326 crore rupees, this will be the first biggest IPO in terms of size. We caught up with the company's managing director, Rajiv Juneja, direct at Mankind Pharma, to learn more about the plans post-listing. Take a look.
Gross margins of Panacea are more than Mankind, and once these products will be shifted, manufacturing will shift in our own factories, gross margins will further improve. Keeping everything in mind, this is a fantastic kind of a acquisition. This is basically one organization which is not properly, its products are not being properly utilized, exploited to the fullest. We feel we can do wonderful with this. We are a domestic company. 97% sales of Mankind comes from India only. So 97% focus is India. And we see, as far as the consumer products are concerned, it's not number of products which matters. It's basically, the same products, how big it can become. So look at Mankind or Unwanted or Braga News. There can be a question that Braga News commands 80% market share, but people do not know. We are doing fantastic in metro. We are doing very good in rural.
Well, pharma company Ipca Labs is acquiring more than 33% stake in Unichem Labs at 400 rupees a share for over 1,000 crore rupees. The company's board has also approved an open offer of up to 26% additional stake in Unichem Labs. Ekta joins us now with the details and why the stock was under pressure today. Ekta.
Well, yes, the news with regards to Ipca Labs is that they will be buying over 30% stake in Unichem for around 1,034 crores. It will be at around 440 rupees per share, which is a 13% premium to yesterday's closing price. They will be buying an additional 26% via an open offer, and that would amount to over 800 odd crores. Now, what Unichem brings to the table for Ipca Labs is that, remember that Unichem did sell its entire domestic formulation business in 2017 to Torrent for around 3,700 crores. Now, they do have their international formulation business, which was with them since 2017. And out of that, 55% of sales were supplies only to the US markets. They do have 3 formulation facilities, 3 API facilities, which Ipca will be getting through the transaction, and all of this would be with compliant US facilities as well. Now, Ipca, remember, has had trouble with the US markets. They've had 3 facilities which have been under the US FDA scanner since 2015, and hence this particular acquisition will give them ready access to the market. However, there are a couple of negatives. The business has been growing at low single digits over the last 4 to 5 years. When it comes to Unichem, they did incur an EBITDA loss as of 9 months FY23. So the entire transaction might in fact be margin dilutive. Also, one of their arms does have a pending fine from the European Commission as per their annual report. Valuations, annualizing 9 months acquisition is done at an enterprise value of around 2.5 times revenue, according to analysts. And the likes of Incred, which is a brokerage, has indicated that the company is paying a high valuation for a loss-making asset. Hence, the deal is expensive.
All right, Ekta, many thanks for joining us. Now, the Finance Ministry feels an Silicon Valley Bank-like crisis is very unlikely in India. 63% of total deposits owned by households are considered sticky retail customers. In its monthly report, the ministry also says that Indian banks are well equipped to handle frequent interest rate cycles. Sapna Das joins us now with more. Sapna, take us through the key takeaways on the health of banking system that's coming from the Finance Ministry today.
Well, for a change, or you may say at least from the government's end, they are pretty confident about the health of the Indian banking system, particularly the public sector banks. A couple of key points that the monthly economic review points out. One, of course, is the fact that why an SVB-like collapse situation will be averted or can be averted very easily in the Indian environment. Number one, of course, your deposits. Most of them, 63% of the deposits being held by most of the households here in India. They are of a sticky nature, so it's not possible for the retail depositors to exit that quickly, number one. Number two, the interest rate cycle has been very prominent in India, and banks are more or less geared up and attuned towards that. Also in sync with the kind of financial regulations or financial conditions that are being set out in the MPC by the RBI. So, that in sync with the market, so to speak. So that's second. Third, also, the exposure of banks to, bond investments is not that great. For example, RBI has its own stipulation, not more than 23% of the bank total deposits, can be put in the HTM portfolio. And here, Finmin has given also an analogy, and they're borrowing also from the RBI data on this front, wherein they're saying that even in the HTM portfolio, if your yields have gone up by around 250 basis points, that's not going to lead to a major loss as far as your investments in the HTM category is concerned. So there is actually no cause of concern over here at all. And last but not the least, at least the top 10 banks in terms of their asset size, the CRAR is very healthy, the CAR is very healthy. So, it's surprisingly a positive commentary coming in. I think that's very good. And in the coming times, you'll also have an idea as to what are the bottom lines that are being reported by the public sector banks. All the results will be coming out pretty soon.
Yes, the private sector banking stocks have had a good run on the back of positive, strong performance coming in, and that's the Finance Ministry's view on the health of public sector banks. Now, Air India, which is currently facing an uproar from its cabin crew, has defended the new contract. Sources say the senior management has reached out to employees, saying the flying allowance they are offering is amongst the highest in India. Pilot unions pledge they will fight even if a single employee is sacked for not signing the new contract. The union has written a letter to Ratan Tata asking him to intervene and address their concerns. Now, several electric vehicle companies which are facing investigations for allegedly misappropriating FAME subsidies are considering Stake sales. Industry sources tell us that these companies are facing working capital constraints after their subsidies were suspended and are now in talks with investors to possibly dilute their stake and raise funds. Parikshit joins us now with the exclusive details. Parikshit, how grave is the situation? How many companies are in the market looking to raise funds by diluting their stake?
Yes, we learned from industry sources that 13 to 14 electric vehicle companies which are under investigation by Ministry of Heavy Industries for allegedly misappropriating FAME subsidies are considering selling a minority stake. CNBC-TV18 has found out that the manufacturing operations and working capital requirements of these players who have had their subsidies suspended are in talks with investors and even leading OEMs in the country. Some are even considering selling a majority stake. The reason for this, according to them, is that subsidies to the tune of 1,400 to 1,500 crores have been on hold and have accumulated over the last 15 months. The withholding of subsidies due to the probe into misappropriation has impacted the creditworthiness of these companies, and the banks are also not very keen to extend working capital loans to them. Sources have told us that Okinawa is among the companies considering a dilution of stake. When we reached out to Okinawa, the management told us they are not looking at divesting a majority stake, but they are in talks with investors to support expansion plans. At the same time, Okinawa and other affected EV companies are in talks with government to find a solution. We reached out to the Society for Manufacturers of Electric Vehicles, and they said there needs to be a rational and practical approach in government's decision-making. They say the government should allow companies to have a fresh start and understand that in 2019, there were no supply chains for EVs and companies are forced to import whatever was not being manufactured in India. But net, all these 13 to 14 companies are in the market. They are seeking investors. They're seeking support to help with their working capital requirements. This could be a year of consolidation in the EV industry.
Thanks very much, Parikshit. That is a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. Watch this space closely. Time for us to head into a short break. But up next, day 4 of pleas seeking legal sanctity for same-sex marriage. Petitioners argue that marriage is an evolving concept and the majority must not be allowed to determine rights of the minority. That and more when we return. In national news, the Supreme Court has agreed to hear a plea by wrestlers seeking a registration of an FIR against BJP MP and Federation Chief Brij Bhushan Singh over sexual harassment allegations. India's top wrestlers have been holding a sit-in protest at Delhi's Jantar Mantar. They claim the police refused to file a case despite them submitting a complaint several days ago. This is the second time wrestlers have taken their protest against Singh public in the last 4 months. Tamil Nadu has watered down its liquor permit expansion plans, withdrawing the need to procure a special license to serve alcohol during celebrations, festivals and at house parties. Annual registration fee and per-day fee will be levied only for serving alcohol at banquets, conventions and conferences. Liquor licenses for clubs and star hotels that were operational before stay in force as well. From Tamil Nadu to Kerala, where Prime Minister Modi is on a 2-day visit, flagging off Kerala's first Vande Bharat Express from the state's capital. Speaking at the event, the Prime Minister said, just like the northeast states and Goa, Kerala will also accept the BJP soon. Danish Anand checked into the Vande Bharat Express that was flagged off by the Prime Minister.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi has flagged off India's 16th Vande Bharat train, which is the first for the state of Kerala, and we are on board that Vande Bharat right now, which is connecting Thiruvananthapuram to Kasaragod. We are currently inside the executive chair compartment of Vande Bharat, and you can see, just like an airplane, government has ensured that passengers get a good look and feel, and the entire journey should be comfortable. And you can see there's a center table over here, the very comfortable seats given for the passengers, and at the same time you can see that there is a lot of storage space that has also been provided, and at the same time there are power sockets for charging your devices. But talking about this Vande Bharat route, well, it is expected that the total travel time is likely to get cut by 3 hours, and the Thiruvananthapuram-Kasaragod-Thiruvananthapuram corridor will become one of the fastest Vande Bharat corridors in the southern part of the country. And very lastly, I would like to show you that the government and the Indian Railways has provided the screen which gives basic details about where the train is right now, what is the speed of the train, and which is the next station. And at the same time, government is also given option of infotainment. So all in all, if we see Kerala's first Vande Bharat train is up and running, and the Prime Minister Narendra Modi has given a very ambitious target to Railway Minister Ashwini Vaishnav of ensuring that there are at least 75 Vande Bharat trains running across the country in the times to come. With video journalist Akhilesh Singh, this is Danish Anand for CNBC-TV18.
Now, the Supreme Court continues to hear pleas seeking legal sanctity for same-sex marriage for the fourth day. Petitioners argue that Parliament does not enjoy unfettered rights on the issue of marriage equality. Petitioners also argue that 12 of the G20 countries have permitted same-sex marriages. Ashmit joins us now with the latest. Ashmit, interesting to start with because it was a hybrid hearing, two of the judges joining virtually, and of course, petitioners making their arguments that the majority should not get to decide for minorities.
Well, indeed, the proceedings were due to begin on Monday, but they could not due to two judges of the five being indisposed on account of COVID infections. But they decided to join virtually. So we had the hearing take place today of the five-judge bench hearing the matter. Today was, of course, day 4 of the arguments as far as petitioners are concerned. Now, amongst the key arguments that have been forwarded, Geeta Luthra, appearing for one of the petitioners, she argued that India is hosting G20, that G20 is upon us. But speaking of the G20, 12 of these G20 countries have very clearly allowed for same-sex marriages, and that India is behind the curve. That's one. Anand Grover, appearing for, again, one of the petitioners, argued that the government stance makes it seem that gender understandings under the LGBTQ banner seem to have come to India only with the English coming here to the country, whereas that is not the case. Anand Grover went on to argue that Indian scriptures record such gender sensibilities much beyond the Britishers coming to Indian shores. And finally, we also had Menaka Guruswamy. She argued at length to point out that not only is it a fundamental right available to the LGBTQ community in terms of marital status, the state is bound to, in fact, ensure that these rights are provided and that the LGBTQ community has access to these rights. Now, with those arguments, day 4 of arguments before the Apex Court has closed. The hearing in this case, we understand, will resume once again tomorrow. Tomorrow, 11 a.m. is when the Apex Court, the five-judge bench, in a hybrid mode, will take up further hearing, further arguments in this case.
All right, Ashmit, many thanks for joining us. In international news, 3 high-profile exits in U.S. newsrooms just in the last 24 hours. Fox News dismissing Tucker Carlson, its most popular primetime host, after the Dominion defamation fallout. Remember, Fox decided to settle that for over $780 million. CNN, meanwhile, has said it has parted ways with longtime host Don Lemon, but has offered no explanation. And NBC Universal Chief Executive Jeff Shell has also left the organization after admitting to an inappropriate relationship. Julia Burstein gets us more. Julia.
Big news for 3 media giants in the departure of 3 men in top roles. Warner Brothers Discovery CNN announcing that it is parting ways with host Don Lemon, who tweeted his frustration about the way he was informed. He said he didn't hear directly from management. CNN responding that it did give Lemon the opportunity to meet. Lemon has been criticized for making offensive comments about women, and his firing comes after layoffs and cutbacks at CNN. Meanwhile, CNN's rival Fox News Media announcing that it is parting ways with longtime host Tucker Carlson. His last day was this past Friday. Shares dropping on news of the loss of Fox, one of Fox's top-rated anchors, who is also one of its most controversial. His departure notably comes after a discrimination lawsuit was filed by a producer on Carlson's show and Fox's settlement with Dominion Voting Systems, after that lawsuit showed how Carlson's show spread misinformation. And we have an update on the firing of Jeff Shell, the CEO of CNBC's parent company, NBC Universal. On Sunday, Comcast, NBC Universal's parent, announced that Shell was terminated effective immediately. CNBC International anchor Hadley Gamble made a complaint of sexual harassment and discrimination against Shell, according to her attorney. NBC's parent company, Comcast, saying it retained an outside counsel to investigate and that evidence was uncovered that corroborated the allegations. Comcast saying this led to Shell being terminated with cause. We have reached out to Shell and his representatives, but have not heard back yet. Julia Borston, CNBC Business News, Los Angeles.
US President Joe Biden has formally launched his re-election campaign. He released a video asking Americans to give him another 4 years to finish what he started. Vice President Kamala Harris will be his running mate at 80. Biden is already the oldest incumbent American president. So a rematch of sorts. It is Joe Biden likely to be up against Donald Trump, who is the frontrunner for the Republicans. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. Thanks very much for watching. Do stay tuned to CNBC-TV18. The news continues when we return.